Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're here to discover how big bus tours bounced back from the pandemic, bigger and better than ever before. It's an excellent case study with lots of lovely insights that we can all learn from. My name is Komal Helyer. I am the fractional CMO at Oban International. I will be your host for today's session. We're very excited to have with us both Charlotte, who is Client Services Director at Oban International, and also Louise, who is the Head of Digital Marketing at Big Bus Tours. I will be shortly handing over to Charlotte, who will take you through the excellent Big Bus Tour brand story, which I'm very pleased to say, hot off the press, is currently shortlisted for at least 2 marketing awards. Once Charlotte has taken you through the case study, we will move to a panel discussion together with Louise and Charlotte to dig deeper into those challenges and insights that both Big Bus Tours and Oban International have discovered together. So please do ask questions in the Q&A as we go along. We hope to get all of the questions answered. If we don't, we will follow up with an additional Q&A in the form of a blog. So, without further ado, I will hand over to Charlotte. Good morning, Charlotte.
Thank you very much, Komal. So before we jump into the brand story of Big Bus, I'll just give you a really brief overview of Oban International, conscious that some of you might not know who we are. So we are a marketing agency who specialise in driving international growth for our clients. So whether they're launching into new markets and need to do so successfully, or whether it's to improve performance in existing markets. And the way in which we execute that is through working with our unique Lime network. So they are a network of local in-market experts who work with us to provide on-the-ground insights and identify opportunities, and also to make sure that our client communications are properly localized and that we're always considering any relevant cultural nuances. So in terms of what we'll cover today, this is the story of how Big Bus Tours was brought low by the pandemic, but how we managed to bounce back bigger and better than before. And that was done through using the latest international digital marketing techniques. And then to finish us off, we'll cover off some key takeaways to understand what this could mean for both you and your business. So just to start with a little bit of background on Big Bus Tours. So they are the world's leading operator of open-top sightseeing bus tours, currently present in 25 cities in 15 countries around the world. So as you can probably imagine, that they have got websites and copy in a multitude of languages in order to support that global reach. Now, Big Bus has worked closely with Oban on both paid and organic search for just over 7 years now. And before the pandemic, Big Bus really were riding high. You know, across that 7-year period, we really did drive dramatic year-on-year growth every single year. And then sadly, when the pandemic hit, everything stopped. Now, we all know that the pandemic was devastating to the tourism industry, but Big Bus were especially affected by the pandemic. And that's because their product is focused on some of the biggest and busiest cities around the world. So years of that growth came crashing to a halt. We can quite literally say that the wheels on the bus stopped turning. So the big question for us was, once operations returned, how could we bounce back bigger and better than before? So coming out of the pandemic, the Big Bus had very ambitious targets for FY23. So we were looking to achieve global revenue growth of 23%. And that was compared to FY19, because obviously it was important that we were looking to drive growth versus the last year of normality before the pandemic. And more importantly, we had to achieve that revenue growth within our pay-away targets. So pay-away is a Big Bus Tours metric, which is very much focused on ROI. And basically what it means is that revenue growth will only be considered as a qualified success if it's to be achieved within a certain cost threshold. So with those targets in mind, we built our strategy, which had 3 key pillars. So the first of those was catching up. We knew we had to catch up on quite a lot of best practice. And we also needed to ensure that we had really solid foundations by identifying and implementing any quick win opportunities. We also needed to actually come out of COVID, so we refreshed our creative to suit the changed landscape. And we also saw that cross-border travel recovered far quicker in Europe than the rest of the world. So we focused on maximising our visibility in non-English speaking markets. And we made greater use of new advancements, so things like new ad formats and bidding strategies. But it wasn't enough to just come out of COVID, with those ambitious targets in mind. We needed to make sure that we came out growing and glowing again. So we looked at experimental activities to test, learn and scale the business. And we also focused on site experience to improve conversion rate. Now, that is incredibly important for Big Bus because they have such a short path to purchase. So it's really important that we are removing any kind of barriers to convert and capitalise on the demand when it is there. So starting with the first pillar, catching up. We didn't assume that the post-COVID world was be the same as the pre-COVID world. We could see that new customer behaviours were emerging, and so were competitors as well. So we reviewed the entire paid search campaign keyword structure, we looked at logo extensions and responsive search ads, and we really knuckled down to implement any quick SEO wins on the website. Now, when it came to coming out of COVID, we rolled out smart bidding strategies. So they are Google's automated bidding strategies across all of our paid search accounts in line with best practice. So we started off with maximised conversion value, and that was to ensure that we had sufficient learnings from large volumes of data before we then switched over to a target ROAS strategy, which allowed us to improve both revenue and also pay away in the process. So we had to restructure over 120 live campaigns in order to ensure that we had the best framework possible for smart bidding. And for smart bidding to work effectively, it's really important that it has sufficient conversion volume at a campaign level. And pre-COVID, the account was set up in a hyper-granular way, which allowed us to kind of navigate market conditions. So we were very much doing a full circle and moving away from that hyper-granular approach to be in line with best practice. So in order to do that, we had to revise how we grouped keywords by intent. We also grouped location targets to increase that conversion data and really harness that machine learning. And we used a very careful combination of both manual and automated bidding strategies in order to drive that optimal impact. Sorry, skipped ahead a bit there. So when it comes to growing and glowing again, we refreshed our creatives to improve relevancy, quality score, and click-through rate. And we also tested a range of creatives and also creative formats to expand our reach and make sure that we were resonating with the audience, whilst also allowing machine learning to identify nuanced behaviours and signals. And we constantly iterated the campaign with incremental improvements in order to deliver sustainable competitive advantage. We also maintained a very strong focus on SEO and UX. Now, that's really important working with Big Bus because the stronger SEO performance we have, that enables us to keep the blended pay away low and ultimately gives us more opportunity to push from a paid media perspective. So we focused on optimizing Google My Business listings to drive customer advocacy. And we tailored payment options by country, integrating that with booking calendar to shorten the booking funnel. So again, obviously Big Bus have an incredibly short path to purchase. So it's really important that we look to shorten that booking funnel in line with that. And we also considered position 0 for optimizing, as well as Google's helpful content update. So we're looking to now integrate more first-person experiences into site content. But obviously the proof is in the pudding, right? So I am pleased to say that Big Bus did bounce back bigger and better than ever before. So traffic was up by 16%, click-through rate up by 66%, revenue was up 33%, so that was 10% better than our 23% growth target. And most importantly, pay away was 4% under target. And just to be clear, the lower the pay away, the better. So really, really strong results. And as Komal mentioned earlier, off the back of that, we have also been shortlisted for some awards. So fingers crossed and watch this space. But in terms of what this means for you and your business, I think the key takeouts from today are, it's really important to be aware that audience personas and customer behaviour could have changed post-COVID, as well as your competitor behaviours as well. So it's really important to just take the time to make sure that your marketing activity is reflecting that. When it comes to smart bidding, I think the most interesting thing for any international marketer is that it doesn't work the same across languages. Volumes are much lower in non-English languages, so it's really important to bear that in mind. And that's why we spent such a long time focusing on getting the perfect blend of smart and manual bidding. And to be honest with you, it is a balancing act, and it really will require testing and iterating to get that perfect balance. Now, obviously, we are also present across 25 cities around the world, and we know that each region is really different. So it is crucial to have timely on-the-ground insights. And if that's something that you struggle to get as a business, then Oban and our line network can absolutely help with that. Mobile is key, we all know that really, and it has been for years, but it really is crucial to adopt a mobile first approach in all of your digital marketing activity. And then in line with that, given that prominence of mobile, a position zero strategy for search really is the holy grail. So thank you very much for listening, and I shall hand back over to Komal to see if we have any questions.
Thank you, Charlotte. That was fascinating. Amazing results, but also absolutely spot on in making sure that you understand the change in your audiences post-COVID. They haven't just gone back to normality. It is a different world out there, and so many other influences as well that are taking effect. So great, thank you, Charlotte. Louise, love to bring you back into the room as well. So I have to say, firstly, I've got a fangirl, Big Bus Tours. I'm a huge fan of Big Bus Tours. Take a Big Bus tour every time I go to a new city, because it's a fantastic way to see the city when you've got a short amount of time. So let's get that out of the way. Charlotte talked a lot about, I've got a few questions just in terms of what Charlotte went through. She talked a lot about pay away. I think it would be great for the audience to understand a little bit more about pay away and what it means in practical terms for your business.
Hi everyone. Yeah, sure. So as Charlotte mentioned in the presentation, pay away is the metric that we use at Big Bus to look at our cost per acquisition. So what it is considering our digital marketing budget as a percentage of revenue. So ultimately, it's how much you're prepared to spend, or in effect pay away, to acquire that revenue. Now, again, lower the better, as Charlotte mentioned. So it's not a case that we have a fixed marketing budget by month, and when we hit that amount, we have to stop. If our digital activity is performing within the pay away that we've set ourselves, we can continue to reinvest in paid media activity, for example. So when it comes to looking at all of our individual cities, there's not a one size fits all. Every city is different online, how they behave. So there's different seasonality, there's different numbers of competitors in the search auction. So we have to consider what is the appropriate pay away level for each city. And then on a day-to-day basis, we're looking at that, looking at the revenue versus the spend, what's the pay away? Do we need to dial up the campaigns, or do we need to pull back a little bit to make sure that we're within that pay away threshold? On top of looking at it at a city level, we also have the pay away target for the website overall. And again, from my perspective, it's important that we're spending enough time and resource on that lower cost per acquisition channels such as SEO. As Charlotte mentioned, that helps us to keep the web pay away down overall. So very data driven. It's like managing 25 different websites in effect. So we look at a city level, a channel level, and a website level, but ultimately it does enable us to continue to reinvest as we move along and continue to grow.
Yeah, and so important for you to work with agencies that totally understand that as well, and that can fit in and understand the way you run your ROI and how you manage and measure things. So absolutely fascinating, and different businesses will have different ways of doing that. I wanted to come back to customer behavior and how behavior has changed. How, I don't know whether you could give me some examples of how you saw your audiences and customer behavior change from pre-COVID to post-COVID. I don't know, Charlotte, have you had any analysis on this from Oban International's work with Big Bus Tours?
Absolutely, yeah. So I think, well, the pandemic was an interesting time for us all, shall we say, but it really was interesting for international marketers, right? You know, no market was reacting in the same way to the pandemic, and all markets really had their own timelines. So when we first started to relaunch activity, our strategy just had to be reactive to kind of government regulations and travel rules. So we relaunched with targeting really tight. And then we were opening up to new source markets kind of as and when cross-border travel was allowed. We also made sure that we took the time to review our copy, just to make sure that it was reflective of any changed audience behaviours and drivers and pain points.
Historically, our keywords would have been around bus tours and hop on, hop off. We saw that shift towards people looking for things to do outdoors. So we updated our ad copy and our website messaging around trying to optimise for that keyword. And interestingly, we're still seeing those ad copies perform really well today. So it's not something that you necessarily are thinking customers are still worried about, but it is a creative version that is working well for us.
Brilliant. The wonders of technology, and also amazing. Thanks, Louise. You know, there's such a great partnership between brand and Oban as well, working together. So we've seen changes in customer, and we know Big Bus Tours have been sort of adapting and been very agile. How have you seen competitors react pre and post COVID? Are they following suit, or is there a reason behind the success as well?
It's been a bit of a mixed bag globally. So as I mentioned, all of our cities are different. Some have a huge amount of competition in New York, for example, but then somewhere in Sydney, you know, we are the only operator there. So it's really varied across the globe. Yeah. But during the pandemic, what we did at Big Bus was really use that as an opportunity to step back and consider all of our processes, particularly from a digital focus. And actually, we had no buses out in city, we had no customers, we had no revenue. So we actually took that opportunity to be a bit brave, and we rolled out some quite big projects that in normal trading conditions would have posed a risk to revenue. So, for example, we migrated our ticketing platform. And of course, we spent the time really proactively planning how we were going to come back for each city, what was the right audience targeting, and things like that. Now, we have some competitors who prior to COVID weren't really causing us a huge amount of challenge online. But during that time, we saw them doing the same. They built new websites, they've come back with PPC investment, which they weren't doing before. They're the ones that are now causing us the challenge. Right. In reverse to that, we saw some competitors lose quite significant SEO rankings. And because we had kept the lights on from an SEO perspective during that time, we were able to optimize and gain some wins there. So yeah, a real mixed bag. But I think ultimately what COVID did was accelerate digitalization for many industries. So that was particularly evident in our industry, and the competitors that came out on top were the ones that had taken that time to really plan how to improve their digitalization.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, there's a lot of stats out there that talk to, you know, when there is a crisis, whatever the crisis is, economic, political, societal this time, you've got to keep the lights on. You've got to keep marketing. That's really important, because you will come out bigger and better. And this is proven point. So lovely. Charlotte. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, all good.
Brilliant. Hi. So you talked about smart bidding in your presentation. What's the challenges involved in smart bidding? Should we be trusting smart bidding? And should you put your trust in that for such a big, large campaign?
a really good question. I mean, running smart bidding at such a scale is quite a challenge, if I'm honest. I think the biggest reason for that really is that no market and no language behaves in the same way. And there's a lot that can happen in market that can cause quite a lot of fluctuation to performance. So it's not sufficient to just stick smart bidding on and let it do its thing. We spent a lot of time focusing on how to structure the account before we actually launched smart bidding. And that was really to make sure that we were capitalizing on smart bidding. So as I said earlier, it needs to have sufficient conversion data in order to make smart decisions. But we didn't want to lose our ability to kind of overlay that with more manual aspects in order to keep things within our control. So that's why we spent such a long time as well, really focusing on finding the perfect balance, if I'm honest, between smart, rule-based and manual bidding, as well as optimization tactics. And I think it's that combination that has driven the results that we've seen.
Yeah, it's very hands-on, isn't it?
Very much.
The AI and smart, it's got to be sort of managed as well, and directed in a certain way. Charlotte, you also talked about short path to purchase. Louise, what does that mean, and what are the challenges involved in that short path to purchase?
So I think the key with all marketing activity is really understanding your consumer behaviour. What are they doing? Where are they doing it? And how are they doing it? So we know that we're not a considered purchase because the majority of our customers are booking their ticket online and then getting on the bus tour within a couple of days. So what that means is the majority of our customers are already away from home. They're in the city that they're enjoying the city break in. And because of that, they're on a mobile phone. So we have a huge proportion of mobile users, about 80% in some of our cities. So we know where they are and how they're researching. Now, if you think about yourself on a city break, you're walking around on your phone looking for things to do. So our buses are actually a huge form of advertising for us, as are our competitor buses, right? So you see the bus and think, oh, nice, let's do a bus tour. That triggers a Google search. So the short path to purchase means we don't have a huge amount of customer touch points. So it's really important that we have strong visibility where we know our customers are looking for us. So for us, that Google search and the Google visibility is absolutely key from position zero that Charlotte's mentioned, hence why we invest in PPC, SEO, and have a focus on Google business listings as well. So it's not a case that we have months and months to have a big bang marketing campaign. It's about doing what we do well and constantly finding ways to improve that. And then from a UX perspective, obviously thinking about the website itself, we have to have a solid mobile experience, and we've made improvements to the checkout journey. For example, we've added Apple Pay and Google Pay as high up the customer funnel as we could. So you can click on the calendar now, select your date of the tour, and then click out and buy your ticket with Apple Pay from that point. So we don't want to stand in our own way. Like, we know customers are just looking to buy a bus tour ticket, and we want to make that as easy as possible for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Louise, in terms of also sort of, it's so important to have a much more sort of frictionless process, right? So adding these payment gateways and easy ways to shop and just click the button really is so important. We've got another question, a couple of questions actually from the floor, which are very similar. And well, I think one answers the other. So how do you ensure you're getting on the ground insights you need in each region? Charlotte?
So I would say at Oban, we are very lucky in the fact that we are quite literally built to do so. So obviously, as an international agency, I mean, international really is part of our DNA. We were set up 21 years ago to be an international agency and have been building out that line network ever since. So we work really closely with our lines to get on the ground insights and timely insights as well, which basically allows us to kind of adapt and react at pace and scale. And then we also benefit from the fact that the Big Bus team, they have teams locally that obviously provide insight via Louise as well. So Louise, I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I was going to, yeah, just that really, Charlotte, in that we have that added benefit of having all of our operational teams on the ground who can provide real-time insight as what's happening in the market. So, the Paris team might come to us and say, actually, at the moment, 50% of our customers are coming from the US, or we're expecting an influx of customers from Spain this weekend because it's a bank holiday. And that gives us the opportunity to, again, adapt our targeting of PPC, dial up and down activity as we think it's relevant. So really important to get as much insight from everywhere, really, all of your local teams and the lines as well.
And I bet you have to be very proactive and reactive to that, right? Because you're always changing and adapting all the time. So marketing teams and Oban must be very busy. But Charlotte, could you just explain Lime's, just the Lime network, what that stands for, and just a little bit more information, because they are very instrumental to supporting. Don't know whether you could just give us a very quick sort of, just for the audience if they weren't aware of what that was or missed it.
Absolutely, yeah. So LIME stands for Local In-Market Experts, and they are quite a unique network of local in-market experts. We've got over 450 Limes that work with us at Oban around the world, and it's really important to us that our Limes are very much in-market. We believe that you can leave your kind of native country and lose some understanding of cultural nuances as things progress. So we work with the Limes in quite a variety of ways, whether that's localizing copy or conducting native first keyword research. But essentially, we work with them to make sure that we're considering cultural nuances all the time, getting those on the ground insights, and all of that feeds into the team in Brighton. So everyone at Oban in the UK is based in Brighton. We lead the strategy, and we get those insights from our Lime network that we, as you say, Komal, are very quickly reacting and adapting our plans in order to align with those.
Brilliant, thank you. Louise, we talked about payment methods and, reducing the friction in the buying process, really. Are you localizing payment methods? Because it's quite fascinating to see, we're so used to things in the UK, but then when even, from the littlest things like I learned yesterday that in the Netherlands, Amazon isn't particularly very big. There's a different Amazon type business. Are you localizing payment methods as well for each market, Louise?
The short answer is yes. Yes, we do. But when we think about markets, we have to think about it as a source market, as in where are our customers coming from. So that's different to the kind of traditional retail model. If you're looking to penetrate a specific market, you're building a website for that audience and adapting the appropriate payment method. So if you think of Big Bus London, it's not a UK centric audience, it's an international audience. So when we put new payment methods on the website, we have to think about that for all of our cities. An example of one that we have recently introduced is Sofort. I think that's how it's pronounced. That was targeting the German audience, and what that does is enable payment by bank transfer, because we know that the German audience don't use debit and credit cards in the same way that we would in the UK. So we have seen some take up in those kind of localized payment methods. But the biggest win that we've seen, really, and the biggest change in the payment mix is that implementation of Apple Pay, because we have such a huge proportion of mobile users. So yeah, that facilitation of speed for the mobile users is really what's been key for us and what's mixed up our payment methods.
Fascinating. I had no idea about Germany, and you make assumptions and marketers make assumptions, and you're trying to get into another territory or expand into another territory, and these assumptions don't ring true in lots of neighboring countries that are very close as well. Things work very differently. To go to a slightly different tact now and go back to customer and the importance of driving customer advocacy. How are you doing that? How are you driving that? How are you getting that short path to purchase and ensuring that someone chooses you over a competitor?
So actually at Big Bus, improving customer advocacy is one of our strategic business objectives company-wide. So what that means is it's cascaded down to every department. ultimately for Big Bus, the bread and butter is the tour, and we want to provide a great sightseeing experience from start to finish. But when you're not on an operational team, so like, for example, myself on the digital team, it's so easy to get wrapped up in your daily work. You've got projects going on at the same time. So having that objective across all departments gives us, makes us stop and think, actually, what I'm doing here, does that improve customer experience? Because ultimately, if it doesn't, what's the point of doing it? In the presentation, Charlotte mentioned that we'd had a bit of a drive on Google My Business listings. So we're seeing more and more people leaving reviews. We know increasingly people are looking to peers for recommendations. So what we did was make sure that all of our city listings have got good visibility, the content's up to date, and really being proactive in responding to reviews. But ultimately, it's not just about being seen to be responding, it's about using that insight, understanding what the customer pain points are, what's working well. And of course, the beauty of our business is that if something's working well in one city, we can share that across all of our cities. So we're really proactive in doing that. We also have a live chat function on the website and app, so that just gives customers added reassurance that there's someone that can assist them in real time. Often they're in city and they need help there and then, so just added benefit for customers in that form.
Yeah, absolutely crucial. Customer advocacy and testimonials and feedbacks and ratings. And Charlotte, for lots of great insights, lots of great results, what's kind of next? Where do you see the next big growth opportunity? So we've been really smart working with smart bidding and sort of manual bidding. Where do you see the next big growth opportunity?
Good question. I like that one. We've spoken quite a lot about how important mobile is for Big Bus. And I think Position Zero is an interesting one because it does present as both an opportunity, but also a threat. So, there's the opportunity of driving that additional SERP awareness, but more and more so, these Position Zero results are giving people enough information to the point where they don't actually need to click through to your website. So we also have the risk of losing out on traffic through to the site. Then Google have also announced improvements to the helpful content update and also some new features, so things like perspectives and integrated search results as well. So we are currently in the process of reviewing our content strategy to make sure that we're optimizing to be in the right places at the right times. But I'd say, to be honest, outside of that, I think the biggest opportunity for Big Bus is through language expansion. So we know that we do a really good job of capitalizing on existing languages and the existing demand. And in order to protect pay away, we're working quite closely with our line network to look at language expansion. So that will basically allow us to kind of widen out the bottom of the funnel as opposed to moving up the funnel. And obviously, so that kind of increases the demand that we've got, but due to the conversion path, it keeps pay away super low. So that's our key focus in terms of looking for the next big growth opportunity at the moment.
Excellent. And what I've really gathered from hearing you both work together and speak together, and even Louise being able to pick up when you dropped off just now, is that there is such a great agency and client partnership. How do you approach that? How do you get that so spot on that you can then together produce such great results?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go first on that one, Louise, but I think it's a really important one. Relationships are everything to us at Oban, and we believe that the more collaborative you can work with clients, then the better results that you will achieve. So we work really hard to get to know our clients, both brands, but also the people themselves, because really we do want to feel like an extension of their own teams and their own businesses. We also have a culture of honesty and transparency at Oban. Trust is really important to be kind of at the foundation of any relationship. And obviously we have been lucky enough to work with Big Bus for just over 7 years now. So I would definitely like to think that collaboration and trust is at the foundation of our partnership.
Shall I just add to that from the client side? So Charlotte stole my line. I always like to say that the Oban team feel like an extension of our own in-house digital marketing team. So it's not an us and them, it's very much a two-way process. By Oban knowing our business inside out, they're coming to me and saying, oh, we've seen in the news that these things might impact your performance. So, for example, recently we had the bushfire smoke impacting New York. Last week we had a big NASCAR event in Chicago, which meant that a lot of the streets were closed. That impacts our operation and, of course, our PPC payaway. So the Oban team are already thinking about those things before I even have to, which, you know, makes my life a lot easier. That's ultimately what you want as a client when working with an agency. So yeah, just to reiterate, it's that two-way process and trust and yeah, working really well together and really understanding the business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can say I've worked with SEO agencies and worked with other agencies, and the importance of being very closely aligned to objectives, understanding your client business and being part and extension of the team. It feels like a cliche to say it, but it's so important that you almost feel like you're one team and that you're following the same path together. I wanted to say thank you so much, both Louise for coming along, Charlotte, for you both sharing your insights. I think you've given everyone some fascinating, tips and ideas on how to use things like smart bidding when you think lots of companies will just use it and just expect it to sort of perform, and often it doesn't. And so it's really important for that intervention and for Manual and Spark to work together. I've also learned that such an importance for being agile, understanding your audience and understanding and having that finger on the pulse constantly is so important. Don't make assumptions. Even last year, the customers probably change, audiences change. As we come out of an economic crisis, again, they're going to change. So we're always having to evolve our understanding of the customer. And data has got to be centered to that. You've got to be watching the data. So being absolutely data-led is so important. And then, going back to that blend of client and agency relationship is absolutely crucial. I'd like to thank you both for your time. Charlotte, I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything else before we say goodbye, but if there's anything else you wanted to add to that.
Thanks everyone for listening and all the really interesting questions that came through as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. I hope you found it as fascinating as I did. Thank you for your questions. We have recorded this, so we will follow up with the recording. You can feel free to share with your colleagues and so on. And watch this space. There's going to be many more Oban webinars taking place over the coming months. So do watch this space, and thank you for joining.